Over the years, I've reviewed a lot of games, old and new, many that I like and some I hate. And they're all available for you to check out and enjoy. Some will clearly be at my expense, and I'm fine with that. It's with this in mind that I've decided to finally get around to doing a video about my all-time top 10 games, in no particular order until the very last one. I'm not usually into the list videos because everybody does them, but I think it's probably going to help give some context to why I come to the conclusions I do when I review games. Also, I'm old, my schedule gets busy, and sometimes it's just fun to reflect on what I've played. There are games from all console generations on this list except for the latest one, which is the 9th or the PS5 Xbox Series X generation, depending on when you're watching this, because I happen to greatly dislike most modern games. If that's a surprise, then you're probably new here, in which case I appreciate you watching. But before we start, I've assigned my awesome daughter the job of drawing a thumbnail of each of today's games, and I'd like you to see if you can guess what each one is. If you can't guess them, then make sure to watch to the end of the video where they're all going to be revealed there. Without further ado, let's get to the games. My first Persona game was Persona 3 FES on the PlayStation 2, and while I think I gave that game about 30 minutes of my time, my wife tore through it and unlocked every Persona because she's a mad woman, and then I just ended up watching. She even made a little spreadsheet and everything to keep track of which one she still needed. It was actually really cute. Anyway, I pre-ordered Persona 4 and enjoyed that a lot more than the hours of Persona 3 that I watched being played, but then when Persona 4 Golden came out on the Vita, I bought and played it through again and really liked this version over the PS2 original. It's essentially the same game where you're trying to solve the mystery of who keeps murdering people in the town of Inaba by jumping into a TV at midnight and fighting monsters. You collect infused personas to help you fight, balance a demanding school life, all while romancing the ladies like the newly added waifu Marie. This is in contrast to real life, where when I was in school my grades were crap and all the chicks thought I was a giant geek. Probably didn't help I was in the marching band. I'm getting off topic. The intro itself looks like you're watching a music video. The action is fun and the bosses are creative. The soundtrack absolutely slaps, as the kids say. You're going to spend a solid 100 hours on this game, but it's one of the few JRPGs where the time spent is actually worth it. Look at that, a semi-modern game made the list. As someone who just doesn't care about the stories in games these days, since everything has either been done before or it's been done before while inserting stupid and factually wrong political messaging, Sleeping Dogs is a game that had a story I was interested in up to the very end. I thought it'd be a little stupid since it revolves around an undercover cop infiltrating the Triad gangs, but I'm glad I was wrong. The voice acting is great, the action, whether you're shooting up rival gang members or going all Donnie Yen and using your martial arts skills to pummel your enemies into hamburger. The action is stylish and violent, and for an open world game, I had a blast tooling around Hong Kong looking for collectibles, getting into street races, fight clubs, and more. I love this game from beginning to end, and I've played it through multiple times now and still don't get bored with it. It's also a lot safer to mess around in this world than in the real Hong Kong, especially in the increasingly Orwellian world those people live in these days. Just when you thought I was going to only have games with Asian people in them, I go and subvert your expectations by talking about this one.
Emotional damage!
Hotline Miami is an adrenaline-fueled, neon pink-soaked, psychedelic rush of murder and darkness, and I love every second of it. It's got what's probably some of the best pacing of a game that I've ever played, in that it doesn't spend a ton of time with needless exposition or story. The game knows why you're playing it, and it doesn't waste your time. The story sets up your mission. After that, you get dropped into a level where one hit kills everything in this game, including you. Clearing the level of enemies results in a record scratch, followed by nothing but white noise and a walk back through the entire level past all the carnage that you've caused, to get into your DeLorean for a drive home with some of the best music that you've probably never heard. Experimentation is encouraged as you get to pick out different masks to wear that give you different abilities as well, and if you want a high score, you can work on killing enemies in one long combo. Even if you don't like achievements or trophies, these are still fun to go for and give the game even more replay value. I highly suggest playing this game with the lights out, headphones on at a high volume, and just let the game take you on a thrill ride to its conclusion, or at least until you creep yourself out with all the pumping music and the massive amounts of blood. Also, don't bother with the sequel because it ruins almost everything that was good about this one. Not even on a sale. Play Mullet Mad Jack instead, after watching my glowing review of it, of course. This was hard because I knew a Resident Evil game was making this list, but I couldn't decide between this and 2. 2 was the first one I played and I still prefer it over the remake, as good as that is, and the same can be said here, as there's just enough missing from 4's remake that I prefer the GameCube original. Or even the Wii version with the motion controls that work wonderfully for this. It's the first of the over-the-shoulder, more action-y Resident Evil games, and while it isn't as scary as the first 3, it's got my boy Leon in it, Ada Wong is in top form here, there are a lot of fun boss fights, and there's still a few jump scares that will get you your first time playing it. The aiming system in this was revolutionary for Resident Evil, and it was a blast to shoot Ganados in the knee, then in the face. Or shoot evil dogs in the knee, then the face. Shoot birds in the knee, then the face. Shoot the Oh, I wasn't supposed to do that. Now I can't buy anything. Okay, I reloaded my save and he's fine. See, it's kind of like living in New York or California. Anyway, I beat this and played New Game Plus another 3 or 4 times back to back to totally upgrade all my weapons, buy up everything available, and murder everything in my path. That doesn't count all the time you can spend in Mercenaries mode either, or that you can unlock a mode to play as Ada that wasn't paid DLC back then, because there was no such thing as DLC and it's as great as it sounds. Everything was already on the disc and games were shipped complete or nobody bought them. As far as I'm concerned, this is peak Resident Evil, and not even Chris Redfield's trend-riddled biceps or Lady Dimitrescu's heaving bosom can beat this. GoldenEye might have single-handedly destroyed my grades in both high school, college, and my social life all at once when it came out. Just kidding, it was my laziness, awful attitude, and weird slicked back hair that did that. This, Marvel vs. Capcom 1 and Turok 2 were all that me and my buddies played back then, and it was mostly during school hours, at my house, as it should be. To this day, it's the only game I enjoy trying to speedrun because you were forced to if you wanted to unlock cheats like Big Head Mode, Paintball Mode, Laser Guns, the Golden Gun, No Radar, Your Nasty Mom, and much more. The game itself was a blast with each level's difficulty setting giving you new and more complicated objectives to handle, easing you in until you're ready for more. I can go back to this game over and over again and it never stops being fun. I can give or take Mario Kart 64, but give me GoldenEye or give me death. By slappers only. My first time playing Street Fighter III Third Strike was at the Fashion Square Mall in Orlando, Florida, which to my surprise is still standing. Me and my friends used to skip a hell of a lot of school, and this was one of our hangouts because I was very directionally challenged back then. We didn't have phones with GPSs like we all do now, and it was a straight shot from my house there. After loading up on candy from the Sweet Factory a few doors down, we headed over to the arcade, and there it was, a new Street Fighter game that I'd never tried. I put my 50 cents in and was impressed by how different it was from 2, and after that I kept an eye out for some sort of home release. I eventually imported the Japanese version onto my modded Dreamcast. This is without a doubt my favorite Street Fighter game and possibly my favorite fighting game of all time. I love everything about this game. The animation is beautiful and still holds up 20 plus years later. The cast from 2 was largely ditched in favor of bringing in newer, weirder characters like Q and Hugo, and a few have become fan favorites like Ibuki and Alex. Before each match, you also had a choice between 2 opponents to go up against, so if you felt more confident going against one over the other, then you could fight that one instead. You had a choice in Super Arts, this game's version of the super duper special moves. The parry system was also fantastic and led to moments like that one in EVO. You know the one I'm talking about. But the standout above everything else in this game, the thing that always keeps me coming back, is the soundtrack. The music in this game is so good that it has to be heard to be believed. It's this mix of 70s era funk and rap and 90s trance that you can hear hints of in Street Fighter VI that wasn't bad, but it still pales in comparison to Third Strike. When you don't want to leave the character select screen because the song playing is too catchy, it's because the music is perfect, like chef's kiss perfect. I can't say enough good things about this game, and I basically spoiled any top 10 Street Fighter or top 10 fighting games videos I do now, because it's clear that this is going to be my number one. But I don't really care because it'll give me an excuse to talk about it all over again. There's Republicans and Democrats, there's men and women, sorry not sorry, those who like pineapple on pizza and those who don't, and then there are people who think Mega Man 2 is the best in the series and people who prefer Mega Man 3. I am solidly in the 3 camp. Humor me for a moment, if you will. This game sports superior controls, the addition of the slide move that I challenge you not to constantly use instead of running because it's so much fun, the introduction of Rush the Robo-Dog and Proto-Man, better special weapons, better title screen music, and better looking and designed stages, including special alternative versions of stages you've already beaten. The only things I'll give to Mega Man 2 over this one are better music in the stages, like Airman and Woodman. The levels there are still bangers, and maybe, just maybe, more memorable bosses. But that's only because Mega Man 2 became such a groundbreaking title on the NES and in the series, otherwise I think 3 would have had those beat as well. People love Battletoads until they try playing it, and then they hate this game, and I really don't blame them, but I've had so much fun playing this game over the past 30 plus years I've had my cartridge that it gets a spot here. As much as I like the Ninja Turtles, Rash, Pimple, and Zitz were unique all their own, and they had their own attitude that made them a lot of fun to play as. They were like, I don't know, the WCW or Juggalo versions of the Ninja Turtles. That's probably an awful reference, and maybe that wrestling reference isn't even accurate. Let me know in the comments, because I don't know or like wrestling very much. Nonetheless, the point I'm getting at is that they were the more alternative and kind of trashier cousins, but not as bad as like the Street Sharks or the Biker Mice from Mars. I still laugh at watching their hands and feet turn into giant boots, giant fists, head-butting enemies, and watching ram's horns come out of their heads. And the beat-em-up action was a lot of fun. Breaking up gameplay that would otherwise get boring, we had ridiculously hard levels like the Turbo Tunnel, the surfing level, the horrible level with the unicycles. Most people I know can't even get through the Turbo Tunnel, much less make it to the unicycles. Or the snakes! I could keep on going, there's so much crazy stuff in this game. Rare Replay on the Xbox One introduced a whole new generation of modern gamers to Battletoads, and while maybe a rewind button helped a little bit, the input lag that the game suffered on there was the great equalizer and would make those same modern gamers cry their soft, glittery tears like it was 1991 all over again. Those tears taste like soy, by the way. Anyways, great game, and if you want to know what I thought of the far inferior dumpster fire that was the newest Battletoads game released on Xbox a few years ago, the link is in the description along with a video of me and my super best friends playing co-op of the original and murdering each other, sometimes on accident. This one is not going to be a surprise to anybody. I was 16 when Final Fantasy VII came out, and I still remember the commercials and how hyped they got me for buying this. It was the first Final Fantasy game I'd really sat down and played since the very first one on the NES, and where that one had a pretty simple story to follow, this one was much more complex and didn't hesitate to kill one of the main characters permanently by the end of the first disc. I spent the rest of my time playing this wondering if Aerith was going to come back at some point, and I scoured magazines in my spare time for any signs of hidden secrets or anything like that, but it was just not to be. Just a bunch of stuff about black chocobos and Knights of the Realm. And getting stomped by Emerald and Ruby Weapon until I figured out what the word strategy meant. But what about the chick, man? The lesson I learned from this game, that sometimes some things just can't be fixed, was a personal and sobering one, because within the last year leading up to that release, my parents had split up and I'd moved into a new house. That was how impactful the story was back then. This was such an important game because of the leap to 3D graphics and cutscenes, but then upon playing it, the materia system was deep as well, the cast of characters were all memorable, limit breaks were a spectacle to watch, and the story is something I still really enjoy to this day. I still don't like the Popeye bodies on all the characters, but everything else is perfect. And for anybody curious, I don't like either Remake or Rebirth. They're beautiful, but that's about it. I don't think I've ever been so disappointed, but then Square Enix is a dead, bloated husk of what Squaresoft was 30 plus years ago. And finally, Castlevania Symphony of the Night is my #1 favorite game of all time. This masterpiece holds such a special place in my cold, dead, black, oil-pumping heart. My original Black Label copy was bought for me at launch as a birthday gift, along with a PlayStation CD wallet, and I still have both along with a factory-sealed greatest hits copy, and if my house is burning down, That's what I'm grabbing on the way out, video power style. I mean, family and pets too, but I'm making time for both. I loved Castlevania long before Symphony came out, but this was my very first Metroidvania-styled game, and the idea that you're playing a Castlevania game that had swappable equipment, experience points, leveling, and a castle that encouraged exploration was so much fun. Playing a character that wasn't a Belmont who used tons of other types of weapons was wild too. It also has one of the best soundtracks of all time, awesome characters and bosses, and graphics that have aged well. There's a reason there are so many YouTubers out there who have done videos about this game being so great decades later. I remember beating this and getting the bad ending the first time, and it took me looking at a strategy guide at the store to find out that there was a whole upside down version of the castle to play through to get the best ending. And to my knowledge, nothing had been done like that before, and I loved the difficulty increase that came with it. Looking back, the only thing I don't like about the game is that there wasn't more of it, and that's just because I'm just selfish and I wanted this to never ever end. And that's with the extra modes to play if you input the correct names when starting a new game. If you haven't played this yet and you're into games like this, it's absolutely worth getting. And that's my top 10 list. As promised, here are the answers to the thumbnail gallery at the beginning of the video. So how many did you get? Let me know in the comments what your top 10 games are, and feel free to geek out as much as you want about them. I've got a second tier list ready to go, so if you like this video and you want more, give it a thumbs up. Until next time.